Greetings, my name is JC,
And I'm Ian.
and welcome to the Gamers Gaiden. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the console wars. Yep, going through the various different console wars throughout time. Yeah, stay tuned. But before we start with that, Ian, how about you tell me what you've been playing?
Uh, you know what? I'll be honest, I haven't been playing too much this week.
Fair
I've
enough.
been pretty busy, but I did find an interesting little indie title on the
Cool.
Switch called The Baba Is You.
Okay. And what's that game about?
Um, it's a puzzle game.
Right.
It kind of similar to Scribblenauts,
Okay.
where you're presented with an issue
Mm-hmm.
and you have to figure out a way to solve it.
Right.
Except instead of writing something down and getting an item,
Right.
you have rules
Okay.
that are visible
Mm-hmm.
that can be modified.
Oh, okay. So
So,
what's an example of a rule?
so a rule would be like flag is win.
Okay.
So that would be your win condition is to touch the flag.
Mm-hmm.
Or a rule might be Baba is you.
Okay.
So in that case, you would be the Baba, which looks like a little sheep. It's really cute.
Okay.
The art style is very
Yeah,
like
you showed me the
minimalist.
game quickly before the show, and it was like kind of like pixelated, like 2D graphics.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and like it's very minimal.
yeah, and it seems to be tile-based puzzles. Like the game is
Yeah,
tiles, and yeah.
I'll put a link in the
This,
comments or in
okay,
the description to the trailer
right.
because really that's the best way to get a feel of it. I've probably already explained it poorly, and I could talk about it forever. But it's very cute. The puzzles are very interesting.
Cool.
You feel like you're cheating all the time
Oh, okay,
because
because you changing the rules.
you're changing the rules to be whatever it is you want.
Right.
Yeah, so mostly that. I did load up finally loaded up the remastered version of Assassin's Creed Rogue,
Okay.
which was the game released at the same time
Mm-hmm.
as Unity.
Okay.
Unity was the first one on this current generation of consoles, and
Right.
Rogue was the previous generation.
Mm-hmm.
I played Unity. I wasn't a huge fan of it because it felt like a step back to me.
Right. Yeah, I
Um,
think you mentioned that in the first episode.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But Rogue was like a step forward with more of what they had done in Black Flag.
Yeah.
So you still
And
have all the naval combat and the sailing.
what have been your first impressions with this one?
I'm kind of enjoying it. It's
Okay.
I'm not super far, but you know, sailing's awesome. You're in like the East Coast,
Okay.
so
Of North America?
of North
Okay.
America. I think you're around Halifax.
Okay, so like Acadia.
So yeah, like it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's icebergs. You do have to use cannons to break down
Shoot them
icebergs. You
down.
can use icebergs to
Wonder how historically accurate that
you
is.
can use icebergs in combat as well.
Right, okay.
Breaking up an iceberg can cause waves that can
Oh, okay,
overwhelm a smaller vessel.
I can see how that works. Yeah.
So no, it's interesting. I'm gonna play more of it, and I'll kind of keep you posted as things are going.
Cool.
But what have you been playing this week, JC?
A lot of Beat Saber.
A lot of Beat Saber.
Yeah, pretty much like every day for a few
So
hours.
your arms are gonna be pretty huge soon, aren't they?
Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, so I completed more of the campaign.
Okay.
And I'm starting to get to an area where everything is on hard, and it's starting to introduce like some near expert stuff.
Okay.
So like there was one in the campaign where it was like do one of the songs on expert with only the right wand, and then
Wow.
I had to do the whole song on that. So it's like it's training me to get better. And I looked at a YouTube video, and the last one is do the one song that they slowly build you up with on expert.
Okay.
But I've beaten every. I'm not really that great at the game, but I've beaten every song on hard now,
Wow.
and I've beaten three of them on expert. And I'm right now trying to do. There's an achievement for 15 full combos on hard, and there's one for 15 full combos on expert. I don't know if I'll ever really get that good, but I'm
You
trying
will,
to
folks.
maybe. We never know, but
Right.
So I think I'm like 10 of 15 or 10ish of maybe 11 of full combos.
Okay.
So I've almost gotten that achievement. I figured like if I get this achievement, then like I can like just work my way up and get better. So I've been playing a lot of that. And there was some another game that I played. A little bit of a news update about this and the reason why I bought it. The game is Starlink, and I bought the Switch version. The company Ubisoft Toronto, who made the game, they released an announcement saying that they're no longer going to be doing the Toys to Life. They're just going to making all the content for it digitally, and I think the game has done successfully in a sense that they've kind of like made their money back, but it hasn't been as successful as Ubisoft has wanted.
Okay.
So they basically discontinued the toy line. And they've discounted all the toys. And it's a game that I really wanted to play through because it had Fox in it. And I remember whenever the E3 trailer came up and I posted it on Facebook, I was like,
Yeah.
yes, Star Fox gameplay. So I did really want to play it, but I didn't pick it up whenever it came out right away. And
It was fairly expensive at the gate.
yeah, it was like near $100 for the starter set. But it went on sale and it was like $60. I think
That's
you can
not too
get it on
bad.
Amazon for about that much. We're talking Canadian prices here. So convert to your own currency. But yeah, so I bought the starter set with Fox ship from a local game store. And then Amazon's having a discount, and I think Toys R Us in Canada, we still have that store because it did well in Canada but not in the US. So both of those places are like clearancing all their stuff. So I went around and picked up like all the ships minus the Target United States exclusive.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna have to get that off of eBay if I want it. But
Which he probably does.
I don't know because I have the gun and the pilot from different packs, but the only thing I don't have is the guy's ship. And for one ship, I don't really know if I want to pay that much money for it. We'll see how much I end up liking the game or playing through it. So
Completionist.
yeah, probably. I mean, I did it for DC Card Heroes deck building game. I have all the friggin' promo cards for that from all the conventions that I wasn't able to go to. But anyway, yeah. So I've been playing that game. I played it on Friday for about 5 hours, and it's really enjoyable.
Nice.
What's really interesting about the game is that, and funny about it is, it has some of the same mechanics as Anthem, but it does it so much better. Oh my god.
Poor Anthem.
Yeah, not to rain on its parade because like it did some good stuff considering we found out that that game was only programmed in like 9 to 14 months. But anyway, yeah, the game is really fun. The interactions with Fox and his team are basically seamless. It's like they knew they had the license to use the Star Fox characters, just like the Rabbit Rabbits Mario game.
Yeah,
And
Ubisoft's been really nailing it with
yeah,
like
Nintendo.
Nintendo properties.
Yeah, and it's like it's as if the game was like does I this is my speculation. It's as if the game was designed to work with Fox, and then their Ubisoft was like, you have to release this for the other two consoles, right? And they're like, oh, okay, sure, we'll just take Fox out, and then they took that out. But yeah, he's got his own missions. He's getting more with his team this month, which I'm looking forward to.
Nice.
There
Now is
seem
that paid DLC
it's free.
or oh wow.
Yeah, it's completely free. The only
That's
paid
nuts.
DLC is you have to buy the toys and the guns to get them, and you can get that through digital means or through the toys if you want to pick them up. And I kind of like the idea of the toys because you can quickly just interact with the model on your controller and then flip out the guns really quickly instead of like
Okay.
going through menus and stuff. Yeah, so it's really cool. The gameplay's fun. I think there's like 7 planets or something like that. Maybe there's 5ish or something. But like the interaction between going from space to the atmosphere to the actual planet is like basically seamless. I've never seen it done so well.
Kind of like
Like,
No Man's Sky.
sure, it's a lot better. I've seen No Man's Sky do that on YouTube and stuff, and it looked interesting, but it wasn't as impressive.
Ooh,
Like,
okay.
yeah, it was cool because like you do a bunch of missions right away, and it kind of like teaching you how to play the game, and then you don't even get see the logo, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, press R1 to turn on your flight capability and then go up into space, and it just goes like Ubisoft like Toronto presents Starlink, and you're just like going up into space, and it's like, whoa, this is really like impressive. Like, and it's just like it only takes like maybe, I don't know, 5-10 seconds or something like that,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it's like poof, you're in space, and I'm just like, cool, like that was awesome. And his ability is you press a button, and then he brings in one of his extra teammates, and the teammate shoots enemies for like a minute or something like that. And each pilot has their own abilities and stuff
Okay.
and whatnot. And each ship has their own abilities, and gun have different like abilities and stuff like that. And the gameplay is just really really fun. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be playing more of it as time goes on. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
But so far, very impressed.
I look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Ian, you have a little bit of an amendment
I do have a little bit of an
to make.
amendment to my trash talking on Generation Zero last week.
Okay.
So we, I had said I'd played it with a friend, and then I went to pick up Far Cry
Yeah, you
New
said
Dawn.
you said that you were disappointed with Generation Zero, and that you'd rather be
Yes.
playing Far Cry.
Because it does a lot of the things better.
Yeah.
So we picked a day. We're like, yeah, we're gonna play Far Cry. We sat down, and we could not get it to like connect.
Okay.
And there's apparently like a fairly major issue with it right now, specifically with online play.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, and it's
That's like its main point, isn't it?
kind of, yeah, it's a lot more fun to play with a person.
It's fascinating how a lot of like these games are being released and they don't do what
Not
they're supposed to
functional.
sometimes.
So we were super bummed out, and we're like, you know what? Let's go back and play some more Generation Zero. Maybe, we'll give it a second chance.
Right.
And we played a few more. Actually, I think I played about 4 or 5 hours more.
Okay.
Because I even she went to bed, and I continued playing a little
Right.
bit longer. And it's still not great
It still
by
has
any
problems.
stretch. Yeah, it still has a lot of issues,
Mhm.
but the gameplay was totally acceptable.
Okay.
This
This is looking at it from like a AA title perspective.
yeah, or
Yeah.
even like a like looking at it as not a triple A,
Right.
less than
Mm-hmm.
maybe a single A.
Okay.
I don't know what's lower than single A.
I don't know. It's AAA, AA indie game.
We'll say
Trash.
indie. Trash. We'll say indie.
Okay.
An expensive indie title
Oh, okay, sure.
because it's still $40, but it's totally serviceable. Like it's
But is it fun? That's really what counts whenever you're playing a video game.
we had fun playing.
Or entertaining.
We were entertained. It's a solid 5 out of 10. Like it's
Okay. So it's kind of something like either like would you say you should play it or
if you're into that, like if the aesthetic is interesting to you,
Mhm.
the atmosphere looks cool. Like the whole vibe and the setting,
Right.
they do really well.
Okay. So you feel that this is a game that like they're definitely going to fix over time?
I don't know if they'll fix it over time.
Okay.
Because I don't think there's been like it's not a No Man's Sky where it came out and everyone was like, this is garbage. This isn't anything like you promised.
Well,
It's
it never
not
was going to be.
it's just not great,
Mhm.
right? And I highly like I think they might patch some of the issues
Okay.
within the next few months.
Okay.
I
But it has like a
don't
main
think there's going to be a
campaign you're
lot of
playing through,
support.
right?
Yeah.
So like
There's a campaign,
you'll
and
probably play
apparently
through
it's
the
about
camp.
20 hours,
wow, okay.
which is
It's
an okay amount
yeah.
of time for like an open world shooter.
Yeah.
And when the world opens up, it opens up pretty good. You
Mhm.
got a lot of space you can travel. Now, I haven't found any kind of like vehicles you can use. I think for the
There's
most
supposed
part,
to be?
I don't think there is.
Oh, okay.
I think you have to hike through it.
Mm.
And that's going to be a little bit of an issue because it is pretty wide open.
Yeah,
but
because
there
you
is
had
option.
mentioned there's no fast travel.
There is options to fast
Okay.
travel. Yeah, it's like it's not if the setting is interesting to you. I would if it's on sale.
Right.
If this was $20,
So maybe wait until the summer.
yeah. If this was $20, this would be an easy recommend.
Because there's going to be this Steam Summer Sale, and I would imagine this is going to be one of the games that
Oh, for sure. Like
Yeah.
this will be
not to like
50 to 75%
credit
off. I'm
those
sure.
developers, but like sometimes it's just worth waiting.
And I mean, looking at the stuff that the studio's done before,
Hmm.
it is a little surprising that it's not a little bit tighter,
Right.
because they did work on the Just Cause games,
Yeah.
which were
Maybe it was like a subsidiary
perfectly
development team or
fine.
something. Because they're still making Just Cause games, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they took programmers from the Just Cause
I think
and
4 came out this year? No, last year.
yeah.
So I mean, they still exist. Yeah,
Hmm.
anyways, I was a little harsh on it.
Hmm.
Um
It's definitely not a 1 out of 10. Is basically what you're getting at.
no, it's for sure a 5.
Hmm.
It's right in the middle. Um if if it looks interesting to you, I mean, $40 I still think is
Right.
a little on the high side,
Yeah.
but $20, even 30,
Yeah.
I would have.
Or I guess if you look at it this way, if you have a friend to play with and you want to play through the
Yeah. Yeah,
campaign and it's about 20 hours, it
if you
could be
want
worth your time.
if you want to play it with a friend, playing it on your own is much less fun, because I did play
Right.
probably about
Because you mentioned before you had played it by yourself,
I
and now
played
you've done
about
it
an hour
again.
and a half, 2 hours by myself,
Mm-hmm.
and then I've probably played like 5 or 6 hours
All right.
with my friend,
Yeah.
and it's way more fun when we're together.
Mm-hmm.
Way more fun. So, yeah, I wanted to make that little correction because I felt I was
Yeah.
little too harsh
It's
on
not
it.
necessarily fully a correction. It's just like more of an elaboration on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's serviceable.
Cool.
If you enjoyed like Left 4 Dead,
Right. Yeah. I think you mentioned that last time.
yeah, and you're looking for that kind of like co-op experience where you
Mm-hmm.
can jump in and have something fun. I mean, there's tons of like avatar customization options
Right.
after your initial like character creation, which is fairly small,
Mm-hmm.
but you're constantly finding clothing throughout the world. Um, some of it has
So the game has serviceable loot.
some of it has perks, some of it has nothing.
Oh, okay.
Some of it has negative perks.
Right.
I for sure found a jacket that had it had a plus to my visibility,
Mm-hmm.
which
Who
why
cares?
would you want to be more visible?
I don't know.
I can't think
Ask
of
the
any
RNG
reason
item
why you would
creator.
want to. But yeah, if it looks interesting to you, give it a chance. Like, give it a chance at $20, definitely.
Yeah.
30
Maybe we'll,
maybe.
watch a let's play or a live stream and then give a little bit of an opinion on it, and then
Yeah,
that's how I generally decide if I want to play games.
yeah. Don't just base it on the reviews or assholes like me. It's much more serviceable and playable, because Far Cry New Dawn is currently not playable with friends,
Okay.
and that's a huge bummer.
Right.
So
But you still do have the main campaign with Far Cry, so
I do still have the main campaign, and I did play some of it by myself, and it is perfectly fine.
Mhm.
But you're by yourself,
Yeah.
and when you pick something up wanting to have that experience with a person,
Yeah.
it yeah takes away from it for sure. So, anyways, that's my correction, my amendment,
Mhm.
and with that,
Let's talk about the console wars.
move on to the console
It's
wars.
gonna get heated in here. Probably not.
No, not at all. So, now this isn't gonna be. We're not gonna do like a history lesson here.
Yeah, no,
This
we're
is
just
all as always. This is our personal experiences with the.
games in general.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna go through a bunch of the different eras
not
of the console
historians.
worlds, and
Other than historians of Ian and JC.
yeah, and so we're gonna go through a bunch of the different eras of the console war and things that happened during different various platform fights, and talk about some stories that we have during those times. And so first, we're gonna talk about what Genesis does and Nintendo don't. So that was the campaign. It was the Super Nintendo versus the Sega Genesis. Sega had a head start, and they're both. It did very, very well, and both did very, very well at the start of the Super Nintendo, and then eventually Super Nintendo just kind of like sold a lot of copies of
Yeah.
Mario. And yeah, and I had a Sega Genesis.
Same.
And I thought that this era was kind of cool to start because, as I believe I mentioned in previous episodes, my best friend at the time had a Super Nintendo, and I had a Game Gear and Sega Genesis, and we kind of lived both of the consoles through each other. because we would let each other borrow consoles or play them at each other's houses and stuff like that. And we both got to experience Super Mario World, like Legend of Zelda, Star Fox, and Sonic the Hedgehog, like Light Crusader, some of the other like exclusive games on each of them. And it was kind of interesting because I never really felt like any of my friends, anyway, really were like choosing a side. Like, definitely, like, I probably thought Sega was better, and my friend probably thought Super Nintendo was better because it
Yeah.
had more like Final Fantasy RPGs. I mean,
But you never had the argument as to like mine is better than yours.
yeah, yeah, not really. There were definitely some kids on the playground who thought that, but we always felt that they were missing out because it's kind of neat. It's like, like play Sonic and have fun about it, and just be able to play anything. And it wasn't like, maybe like the only argument I can really remember in this area was like Mortal Kombat 2 and which version of Mortal Kombat 2 was better. And like there was a lot of people who were like had a Super Nintendo because mostly everybody I knew had one, and I had the Sega Genesis. And it was just kind of funny because like the whole purpose of the game for the kids were like the brutality of the game, and like the blood and gore and stuff like that.
Now, honest question, JC, did you have the 3-button controller or 6-button?
uh I had a 6 button controller. I had
Okay.
one 3 button controller and one 6 button controller. So I didn't really play multiplayer on the Genesis actually with this game, because I just couldn't afford a second controller at that time. But yeah, whenever I was playing it, I was playing like against the computer with the 6 button controller, and I always thought it was better because it was easier to hit the Z and C button rather than the shoulder button. So whenever I transferred my knowledge, which the combo sets are the same over the Super Nintendo, I found it a little bit I don't know, a little bit harder just to remember to hit, like use my left hand to hit like hard punch rather than the Z button, for example.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why people think the Saturn controller is one of the best fighting game controllers because of the way that it's laid out. But anyway, yeah. So that's really the only argument I remember at that time. There were some of the Disney games, but like we kind of, if I got one, then the other person wouldn't get one, and vice versa. So like
Yeah.
it would be like there wasn't really like the Aladdin on the Genesis is better or Super Nintendo is better because um, we didn't both have them. So, or if we rented them, we generally rented them for the one console, and we just try and play through them. So, yeah, yeah. The one thing that I do regret was with this generation was that there was like some games that like I didn't have enough time to beat. So like I actually didn't beat Link to the Past whenever it was like new-ish. And the reason why was because a friend who had a copy eventually got rid of it, and I wasn't
Oh.
over enough playing that game. I was over
Yeah.
enough, but or playing that game to beat it like while it was new. So it wasn't until like middle school whenever I actually like sat down and like actually beat the game. So like that was disappointing. And there was always some things like that too, where it's like because I had some friends who would always sell all their stuff and then get the next console. So that was kind of a thing that I kind of like regretted about not having a Super Nintendo. But yeah, yeah. So
See, I had a very different experience because most of the people that I knew growing up had
hmm
a Genesis.
yeah,
I knew very like I might have known one or two kids who had a Super Nintendo,
mm.
and they were typically not kids within my friend group.
Oh, okay,
You know,
because
there
they had Nintendo,
it was like your parents' friends' kids,
right?
and you're over there, and they have Super Mario World and
Hmm.
like Donkey Kong Country, like that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. So yeah, I didn't really get. I wasn't. I wouldn't say I was really involved in this aspect of the console war because everybody I knew had a Genesis.
right. You're all playing the same
Yeah,
games.
you're all playing the same stuff. There was
Yeah.
no like, man, my version's way better than yours.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I essentially had no experience with this because everybody had a Genesis.
Right.
So, which I mean, to attest to its sales, I guess early because I think I'm a year older than you,
Hmm.
so I would have had my Genesis a little bit sooner.
Yeah, and I got the Game Gear like
Yes.
instead of a Sega Genesis early, and then got a Genesis a little bit later. But
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, I had the Model 1
Hmm.
cuz that's all that there was at the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I really I didn't feel this or know about this until it was already over.
Yeah.
I had no experience with it. Like yeah, everybody had a Genesis.
Cool, cool. So another console war, if you could call it that, is what I like to call color versus green puke. Game Gear versus the Game Boy.
Someone's a fan of one over the other.
Yep. And I never understood this as a kid because I was like adamant. I was like, but it's color. And then I think like no one was really talking about battery life, people my age. And it's
No.
like, and like that's whenever I learned about rechargeable batteries, and then my friends also learned about rechargeable batteries. So like that wasn't really the issue. The issue is really the games, and it's like okay, but I felt that there was a lot of games because there's a lot of really good platformers for it, and pretty unique games as well. But like whenever you go over to the Game Boy, it just has way more, and it's just like almost an oversaturation. And it's like if you don't, if there isn't something you do like, then you can basically just um, find something that you do,
Yeah.
and it has a lot of things that the Game Gear doesn't. Specifically, like early in its life cycle, more puzzle games. It has Mario, but like that, I don't know how valid of an argument that is because like Game Gear had Sonic, and both of them are very competent like platformers.
Yeah.
And seriously, like there's next to no RPGs on the Game Gear, and
No.
if there were any, outside of a handful of them, most of them were only available in Japan, and that was kind of I think due to North America being a dumber audience in the eyes of Japan and them not releasing many RPGs for us. But yeah, so you had RPGs like Final Fantasy Legend, for example, early in the life cycle on the Game Boy, so you had those options as well. But yeah, as a kid, I never understood it. Like having to until Pokemon came out, I didn't understand it. Because
Yeah,
that's
Pokemon
whenever,
came out and I had to have a
yeah.
Game Boy.
But it's like you had to be underneath a light. I didn't have to be underneath a light. It was hard to tell what everything was because like the original Game Boy, like if you don't remember, like look at an original Game Boy underneath a lamp, it's kind of hard to tell like you in comparison. It's hard to tell the difference between
Your
some of the
lighting
stuff.
has to be real
It
good.
has to be really good. It's finicky. It's kind of like the old Tiger Electronic stuff. Like eventually, like my
Well, that
Simon's
was
Quest Tiger Electronic had to be held like that, like almost like this underneath the thing because I had Simon's Quest for Tiger Electronics and Gargoyles.
I
Um,
had Ninja Gaiden
cool. Yeah, my friend
and
had Ninja
Blades of
Gaiden actually.
Steel.
Oh, okay, neat. Did it say Blades of Steel? Because that's like,
I'm
don't know.
pretty sure it didn't.
Oh, okay, that sucks.
It might have. It was a real big handheld, and that probably took up all of the memory.
Yeah.
That was a horrible thing. And the Tiger Electronics handhelds were horrible. And again, this is another console war that I was essentially not involved in
Mm.
because, as I've mentioned before, my first handheld was an Atari Lynx.
Yeah.
I don't know what your complaint is about a backlight because I either had mine on or I turned it off if I wanted to
Right.
because I had that option.
Yeah.
If I wanted to play left-handed that day, I could flip my console over and play it the opposite way.
Yeah.
I had a flip button to flip the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
I think
knew.
I also took more batteries.
Uh, Game Gear was 6. Do you remember how many?
It was like it was either 6 or 8.
Oh, okay. I'll
It was a lot,
figure it out and
but
put the real answer.
there was only like 50 games for
Yeah, there
the Atari
was
Lynx,
even
and
less.
eventually I did. I think the Game Gear was my next handheld,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Eventually, you got
Pokemon
to.
cil came out, and I had to get a fucking Game
Yeah,
Boy.
like it almost was like I didn't really know many people with a handheld other than like my best friend at the time who had the Super Nintendo. He also had a Game Boy. And until Pokemon came out, and whenever
Yeah,
Pokemon came out in like '98, it just it blew up. Like it everybody knew about it. Everybody was watching the cartoon. Everybody was talking about it. Was playing the card game whenever it came out. What like I was like, what the hell? This is like I was playing Magic the Gathering at the time, and I was like, "What is this? Like, less complicated Magic the Gathering? No thanks." But like, I even had Pokemon cards. But and everybody got even people you didn't think played video games got a Game Boy because of Pokemon.
Yeah, I remember like we would after school you would go home, you would watch Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon,
Yeah.
and then you would ride your bike to the park to play Pokemon against other
Yeah,
kids.
with your link cable,
Yep.
because you needed a cable to connect to each of the different consoles.
Yep,
Yeah.
you would trade Pokemon and you would play against other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was back when it was pretty much just rock paper scissors. You didn't have a lot of the hidden information that you do now.
You mean with the Pokemon types?
Yeah, and like stats and that.
Well, in the original, there's still like 4 or 5 types, but like if I recall correctly, Psychic didn't really have a weak like like a Pokemon that defended hard against it. So there was kind of like 5 or 6 of them, and then Star.
You had less of the division that you would now. But
Indeed, yeah,
I mean,
definitely like playing through Pokemon Let's Go Eevee for the Switch. I definitely noticed like they've like corrected all of the older Pokemon with like the newer versions, so they have all
yeah.
the like new versions of elemental types and stuff like that, and it's definitely changed. Yeah, yeah. But yeah. Anything else to say about Game Boy or Game Gear?
I
Or...
mean, Game Boy won hands down,
Yeah,
but
it did. I mean, it's
I'm
sold.
glad it did too cuz it pushed forward handheld gaming.
I would say the DS pushed forward handheld gaming.
But you wouldn't have a DS without a Game Boy or a Game Boy Advance.
Maybe. Oh yeah, sorry, I meant to say Game Boy Advanced.
Okay.
I think the Game Boy Advanced pushed it forward because like really like it was a console that was around for 11 years and
Yeah.
then or 12 and then it
And had
finally got
almost
replaced.
zero competition when it launched cuz really all you had was the like Tiger handhelds,
Well, yeah,
which were garbage.
there was the Game Boy, the Turbo Duo, which is a handheld Turbo Graphics, and then the Game Gear, and then the Tiger Electronics toys. But they other two were and the Lynx, and the other two were later. 3 were later. Game Boy kind of beat them. Maybe
Yeah.
the Lynx came out first. I don't really know, but
No.
yeah. Um, it kind of annoyed me how the only thing they did was come up with a better resolution screen, but other than that, yeah, yeah. So I guess let's move on.
Okay.
CDs. Enter the CD-ROM. So CD-ROMs started becoming big in for games anyway in the early '90s. And there was the Turbo CD and the Sega CD.
The hell's a Turbo CD?
So the TurboGrafx 16 had a Sega CD type add-on that went into the back of it. You don't know
Uh,
much about TurboGrafx 16, so but yeah, it was
all I
actually
know is that my rich aunt had a Turbo Graphics because it was expensive.
mm,
And I remember playing, I want to say Bonk's Adventure.
yep, Bonk's Adventure is the platforming
I
game on
remember
it with
playing a
their
lot of
first
that
mascot.
anytime I went over there, and I remember their cartridges being super weird.
Yeah, their credit card size.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about the Turbo CD is actually the world's first CD console. Yeah, it
There
wasn't
we go.
Sega CD. In Japan, it came out in the Turbo CD first. And the TurboGrafx and the Turbo CD actually won the format war in Japan. Like they were the second most popular console, if I recall correctly, behind Nintendo. And
Wow.
like Sega was like third or fourth or something, whereas Sega was more popular in North America.
I remember being able to go into a Radio Shack
Yeah.
in like the mid 90s, and like if you spend $100, you'll get a Turbo Graphics.
Yeah. This is what the just so people understand what we're talking about. This is actually one of the cartridges. It's basically a credit card with the chips in here and then the connector pieces here, and you insert it into the front of the console. It's the Sega Master System has a card game as well. It's a platforming game called JJ and Jeff.
Sure.
Um, so it's actually a really great console. It has really great games, but it
Yeah,
probably
I remember the game quality being great, but I feel like it was super expensive when it launched.
yeah, it was kind of expensive, but like not as expensive as a 3DO. It was
You're moving way too far ahead, JC.
I understand, but The marketing in North America probably didn't help it.
Yeah.
And it's launched kind of like it was launched, I think, in like 2 or 3 North American cities, and then it had a soft launch. It had a soft launch there, and then it had like an actual launch, and I don't think that really helped it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so during the coming full circle Turbo CD and Sega CD, the "Welcome to the Next Level" Sega slogan, that was really cool. I think that's one of my favorite like slogans for one of the early consoles is "Welcome to the Next Level." I remember
It was
seeing,
good.
yeah,
And then you'd had the commercials with the like CNC Music Factory game,
hmm,
whatever the boxing game was, I can't remember.
right,
And Sewer Shark,
yeah,
and you'd have clips of all of these mashed together.
yeah. It'd just be
Um,
like cuts of like all the FMVs in the game, but
oh,
no actual
well, because
gameplay.
they were only FMV games.
Yeah,
There really was no
but even
gameplay.
the games were that had gameplay, they were just showing the FMVs to people, be
Oh
like, "Oh
yeah,
my god, look! It looks like a VHS tape."
yeah, it does.
um,
I knew like I had to have a Sega CD. I
hmm,
had to. I ever for like years I was like I asked for one for Christmas.
yeah,
I'm like I want a Sega CD. They're so cool. The games look amazing. And then eventually I I'd gotten like a bunch of money for my birthday,
right,
which I'd saved, and then I got some money for Christmas and I'm like I'm buying a Sega CD.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean it was cool. I played some of my favorite um games
right, yeah,
on the
because
Sega
you mentioned
CD.
you rented a lot of games for that too.
Yeah, and like because I picked it up way late in its life cycle,
Hmm,
I was able to pick up stuff at like a Blockbuster
yeah,
or whatever because they were clearing them out.
hmm,
I remember buying a copy of Monkey Island for like $5.
right,
That was one of the first places I played Monkey Island
hmm.
was on the Sega CD.
And was that your first exposure to Monkey Island?
Yeah,
Cool.
and it was like it might have been it wasn't my first point and click adventure game,
Right.
but it was the first one that I actually could sit down and play through,
Oh, okay.
and I loved it.
Hmm. Yeah, a
Then
lot of people really love that game. It's
and
like
then
high on their list of favorite games.
like it's yeah, outstanding. Then you had like Snatcher,
Hmm.
Lunar,
Yep.
Rise of the Dragon.
Yep.
No, Rise of the
R-
Triad.
no,
Nope, Rise of the Dragon.
Rise of the Dragon,
It was Rise of the Dragon
which you
because
can get
Rise of the
on.
Triad was a different game. No, it was Rise of the Triad.
There's a Rise of the Dragon game too.
It was Rise of the Triad that I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Another like point and click adventure.
This game.
I'm wrong. It was Rise of the Dragon.
Yep.
JC wins this round.
I know. I
Note
thought it
that
was
down in
Rise of
your
the
books
Dragon
right
because
now.
it's kind of similar gameplay to Snatcher.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but another like I mean it's an adult point and click adventure game that
Hmm.
I probably shouldn't have been playing as like a 10-year-old kid
Yeah.
or
Which
however old I might have been.
Rise of the Dragon is actually available on GOG, just so people are aware.
Oh, no
Yeah.
shit.
So if you want to play it, it's PC. It all came out for MS DOS at the time, so the MS DOS version is on GOG. Yeah.
But there was so much great content for the Sega CD and
Hmm.
you already had that install base
There's a lot
of
of crap for
all
it
of the
too,
Genesis.
but
Well, yeah,
yeah,
cuz any of your FMV games were not good.
yeah.
I uh yeah.
What's interesting about the Sega CD, and I wish they would have known about this earlier. I think they maybe knew about it at Sega, but they never really talked about it. A new game that has come out within the for Genesis Sega CD called Pier Solar, which is a indie game it's an RPG. It actually uses the a cartridge for the game, but then it also has an audio CD that you can plug into the Sega CD, and it plays the music off of the CD while it's running the game off the cartridge. So that I don't know if they discovered this obviously, but I don't know if like people knew about it at the time. But I think if they would have like maybe marketed some of the um games like let's say Fantasy Star 3 and 4, which came out like during the life cycle and after the life cycle,
Yeah.
if there was an option to get like a deluxe version or something like that where you could get like a audio CD
CD
with it,
quality sound.
because you can put that CD in your CD player and then just play the music, but then you could also put it in your Sega CD and then play it off. Like if they did stuff like that, it probably would have helped sell more consoles, I think.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
It might have. But then I mean, then it just got too complicated because you had the 32X.
Yeah, Tower of Power.
You had Sega CD 32X games where
Hmm.
you needed your system jacked full of things
Yeah.
to be able to play, and
Yeah.
yeah, it became a little too much.
Hmm. Yeah, it did. And then it's kind of around that era, which I didn't really follow that much, was the Atari Jaguar, which is their "Do the Math" slogan. I remember the commercials very briefly, where the old cranky lady, I guess she's not old, but the cranky lady is teaching the class, and she's like writes 64 and circles it a bunch of times, like, do the math. The number's higher, therefore it's better. But I didn't really pay attention to the Jaguar or
Same.
to any of its games at the time. But in high school, well after the Jaguar was long dead and gone, um, I met this person in high school, and they were like Jaguar's number one fanboy. And it was really fun. He was a great guy, but it was really fun meeting him and talking to him about it, because he had, I believe, a complete collection, and he was trying to
Wow.
get a complete boxed collection. He had the CD peripheral onto it too, and he had a bunch of the CD games as well. Maybe all of them. I'm not sure about that, but there wasn't very many of them, so that probably wasn't hard for him. But yeah, he had swag. He had VHS tapes that had like the advertisements and stuff like that. Like, he was obsessed with this system, and he thought that it was like really, really great console. And I know there's a lot of people, like, apparently it had a lot of pre-orders in England, in Europe and stuff, but they didn't send out enough copies for the demand, so it kind of like floundered there a little bit. It's a very interesting history if you read up about it and watch some like documentaries of people who have done some information, who are like more fact checky and stuff like that. So it's definitely an interesting thing to look into. But yeah, that's really the only thing I ever remember about it, was the advertisements being outlandish.
I remember the ads being crazy.
Hmm.
I don't know a single person who owned one.
Yeah.
I mean, we all talked about it because it was like the most expensive console,
Hmm.
and it was like 64-bit,
Yeah.
which at the time, like everything is 16.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and 32 is about to
Even
come
we could
out.
do the math. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah, but
it
it's really
was,
like Tom and Jerry chips, which are, anyway, it's which are two 32-bit processors or something, and everybody, a lot of what was the thing hurt this console is apparently has the same processor that the Genesis has, and it was meant to be used for something else, but a lot of programmers just used that to make a lot of the games, so they ended up looking like crap.
yeah,
And there's a big indie scene with the Jaguar now, which is kind of interesting. And they're actually starting to discover some of the limitations, like true limitations of the hardware, and pushing it. And a lot of the games look kind of like some of the earlier games, like Cybermorph and stuff like that, but a lot more technically advanced than those games, and like showing what maybe could have been in a different parallel
yeah, because
Earth.
a lot of their like big things were still like vector graphics.
Yeah, or there's just like non-shaded polygons like Star Fox.
Yeah,
That's what kind of caught me about this, from what I recall, which is like, even whenever this person was talking to me about the console, it's like I went to his house and played a bunch of the games and stuff like that, and like, yeah, it had Alien versus Predator, and like that's the game you need to get for it, and
yes,
yes, that probably sold consoles, and it was a great game, but a lot of the 3D games with like polygons and stuff like that, that kind of looked like Star Fox to me, which came out in '93,
yes, they did.
and it's like,
Unshaded Star Fox.
yeah, yeah, and it's like it just had like, even the ground was just like bland one colors, but I'm sure a lot of the games are fun, but it's it was kind of, I kind of missed out, and it didn't really hit my radar.
I mean, it hit it for me, but
Hmm.
it wasn't anything affordable to anybody that I knew.
Yeah, especially since like people were already invested in the Super Nintendo or the Sega Genesis at that point
And the Sega
anyway,
CD.
and the Sega CD. Yeah. Um, yeah. That it's like, why bother buying one of these new consoles whenever you're still getting games for all the older stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Then around the same time, 3DO started to become a thing for about a year, 2 years.
So this one's actually kind of interesting to
Mm-hmm.
me. So this was one of my first like big I guess, moves in gaming.
Right.
So I knew you had three major consoles out at this point.
Yeah, they're coming out.
Or actually, for me at the time, they were
Right.
out.
Yeah.
Like they existed. You had the 3DO,
Yep.
the PlayStation,
Mm-hmm.
and the N64. And I knew cash wise, I could only have one. And I tried out all of them so many times,
Right.
really trying to make a good informed decision. And I remember playing a lot of stuff on the 3DO,
Yeah.
and that was my pick. I wanted the 3DO,
Right.
but its price was much too high.
Yeah.
And that's what drove me to the PlayStation, was because I couldn't, as much as I wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
I could not afford a 3DO.
Yeah, I remember it being advertised in Game Players magazine, and it like basically that was the biggest comment about it in those magazines from those editors and article writers as well, was that it was just really really expensive. It had some pretty solid titles, Road Rash being one of
Road
the
Rash,
biggest ones that they kept
which
on
again,
mentioning.
I mean, it was on the Genesis.
True, but not it didn't look as good as this.
We did get one on the PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think that happened though because the 3DO failed.
oh yeah, absolutely. But like I remember Gex.
Yep.
Gex was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
There
Because it came out on
was
that console first, because it's by Crystal Dynamics, and they kind of like worked with them to.
Horde.
Okay.
I want to say Horde.
Yeah, there's a game called Horde. I think that game was on the Sega CD as well.
I think so. It had Kirk Cameron in it.
Mm-hmm.
And yep, the Horde.
Okay.
Sorry. It was like tower defense basically.
Oh, it was on Sega Saturn, not Sega CD. Okay, it was a tower defense style game.
Yeah, like well, you were defending a village, but same
Right.
idea. You've got a horde of things coming your way,
Mm-hmm.
and then the little cinematics in between missions
Right.
had Kirk Cameron, which was kind of hilarious
Cool.
because he was still sort of relevant, but not.
Okay.
And I think it was before he went super religious.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he probably was, but
Mm-hmm. Publicly.
yeah, yeah, it was the 3DO for me was the big win. But
Yeah.
the funny thing about this was when I realized, I'm like, okay, fine, it's gonna be between the PlayStation or N64. We would argue at school
Mm-hmm.
all the time about what was better between the PlayStation and the N64. And I actually got into a fight with a kid, an actual fist fight. I
Right.
got beaten up because I said the N64 was garbage. Yeah. I
So you lost the argument.
I mean, I guess I lost the console war.
You
I didn't lose the
heard it here
argument
first.
because the PlayStation, in my opinion, was a much better
I
console.
mean, the sales kind of speak to that. But...
It's true, and you had a lot better content. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The N64 did have some solid games,
Yeah.
but I think overall, pound for pound, PlayStation was a much better console.
Yeah.
So even though I lost that fight, I might have won that console war.
You won the argument. You lost the fight. You were correct. Yeah, this for me, the era of 3D really, like the 3DO didn't even like blip on my radar.
Come
just
on,
because
man.
It was it was just
Road
so
Rash, Demolition Man,
none of
Carmageddon.
none of the games interested me. None of them. I was like already solidly into RPGs at this point.
Carmageddon.
For me, it was obviously like I've mentioned a few times before, the Saturn or the PlayStation, and the X64 was sort of an afterthought.
Nobody even talked about the Saturn.
Well, I did.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You still may be the only one.
I'm not the only one. We're a strong force on YouTube. We exist.
Let me know. Let me know how many of you are Saturn supporters.
Okay, well, that might be
And
a
then I'll
better
know how
debate if
many
we had
then
more
I'll know
subscribers.
how many alternate accounts JC has.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well,
Cuz that
Albert Odyssey. Come on. Sonic Extreme. If that game came out,
but it didn't.
exactly, it didn't, and that's why JC didn't buy a Sega Saturn.
You had Scud, which probably wasn't even that great, and Mr. Bones.
Virtual Cop.
Virtual Cop was on the Sega CD.
No, it wasn't.
Wasn't it?
Nope.
Dreamcast?
Think for True Cop. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
House of the Dead 1 was on the Saturn.
It was in the arcade. Actually, both of those were in the arcade.
That's why you wanted them on the Saturn, so you didn't have to down as many like quarters in order to play the game.
No, you just had to fork out all of the quarters from the get-go to buy a Saturn.
Yeah. It was the same price almost as this PlayStation whenever it came out. $2.99 or whatever. Anyway.
PlayStation was a better choice.
Well, I bought a PlayStation, so yeah. I mean, Final Fantasy came out and like that was astounding. So
yeah,
then,
most of your great series that you will play at this point had roots on the PlayStation. I mean, Final Fantasy, no, but a lot of them, yes.
Tomb Raider arguably was developed with the Saturn in mind first.
In mind. I think about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. Like I'm not discounting
We're gonna
the
have a fist
PlayStation
fight
1.
here.
No, we're not. Yeah. Boom. But
I'm scared because JC's been playing a lot of Beat Saber.
oh, okay. That would be an interesting
Anyways.
ability. But yeah, I don't know. The only reason why I even looked at the Nintendo 64 was due to The Legend of Zelda. Like that was it for me. Wave Race looked really cool, but it like got boring like the weekend after we rented the console.
Yeah, that's true.
And there was a lot of like racing games, but I'm like
Pod Racer was a lot of fun, but again,
was it?
I had a lot of fun with it, but again, it's one that gets boring over time.
Yeah,
like,
that's
it
why I
doesn't
was
have
like,
a lot
was it?
of.
There's a lot of like my
Shadows of the Empire. Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah.
It doesn't really hold up because playing it now, it's real rough. And I can say that because I've gone back.
Well, like even GoldenEye is rough playing it, but it still had like really great level design and stuff like that.
It did
for its time, especially. And then Perfect Dark was like astounding because it was like 4 like players with like a bunch of like weird guns and stuff like that, like laptop gun that you can throw on a wall. Come on, that's amazing.
Yeah,
you guard your flanks and then you just
It had standouts, but overall,
yeah. I think it had standouts a lot because, and the reason why it was really successful in a lot of people's eyes, at least in my friends' eyes, was that every time a lot of people would go over to somebody's house, like nobody but JC had a multi-tap. So like, they could come over to my place and play like Crash Team Racing or something like that. But like, if we went over to somebody's house who had a Nintendo 64, we could play Perfect Dark, GoldenEye, any of the Mario Party games. The WCW games where you could create your own wrestlers because that was always fun.
Well, I mean, you could play those on, but you couldn't play 4-player.
Exactly, a lot.
You did have the wrestling games on the PlayStation as well.
You could only play them 2-player, or you'd need a peripheral in order to play 4 players, which not a lot of, in my experience, not a lot of people had.
No.
But
no, the N64 was the ultimate like sleepover console, hands down. But better games on the PlayStation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
what's a Saturn?
It's a console that's on that table over there. Albert Odyssey.
Next point.
Shining Force.
Next point.
Okay.
It wasn't Shining Force. It was Shining something else.
No, there was Shining in the Holy Ark, Shining Wisdom, and Shining Force 3, Episode 1, and then there's the 2 and 3, which wasn't released here. There's a lot of really great software titles for the console.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people looking at it
Scud and
after
Mr.
the
Bones.
fact. Sure, Scud and Mr. Bones.
Those
are like the 6 out of 10s, 7s out of 10s, but like
I think Scud's a 4.
Maybe, I have no idea. I've never played it. Anyway, $99.99. Remember that advertising?
I do.
It's thinking.
I had a friend whose birthday was that month, and I think his mom worked at a rental place.
Oh, cool.
So she had rented one for him for his birthday with a bunch of games. And
we're talking about the Sega Dreamcast
here, Dreamcast.
Just in case people haven't caught on.
The Dreamcast. Yeah. And we went over and we played it, and we were like...
Sonic Adventure was so awesome.
See, he didn't have Sonic Adventure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of like...
That and Phantasy Star, man. I got the console whenever it died from a game store, as I've explained before.
Same.
I bought like the console in like a third of the store's collection. And yeah, whenever I was playing that console, I slowly realized I was like, I would have had as much fun with this console that I was having with my PlayStation 2. That was my feeling about that console.
It didn't have the RPGs that the PlayStation 2 did.
It had some RPGs that were actually pretty fun.
It had some, but it didn't have the like same
No,
quantity.
but arguably, Gradia 2 and if it uh if it sold more, it would have gotten more. I think.
Possibly, but I mean, it did still have some good games, and I will
Shenmue.
say, playing it after
Mm-hmm.
it, to me, I mean, we're gonna get into it in a minute,
Mm-hmm.
but it was the Dreamcast was essentially the GameCube of this generation.
Kind of, yeah, I would agree with that
It was
because
a
it came
real
out early, like earlier than the other consoles by a year or two, depending on what console, and it was trying to beat everybody to market. It kind of pulled a Sega Saturn,
yeah,
and it failed at it.
again,
Yeah,
like the Saturn.
but it wasn't a surprise early launch where it was like, whatever, we'll just
No,
send over consoles and add a patch onto it so it's English. But yeah,
no, it had some really innovative ideas.
yeah, online play.
Yep,
It really pushed
a
that
web
forward.
browser.
Yes, a web browser with the CD that you could like view different, like Yahoo at the time,
Oh yeah.
or the Sega site, and then see some new news. And you could like now we get like updates and stuff like that from video games, and we don't even think anything about it. But like the Dreamcast actually did that.
Well, even the VMU,
Yeah.
like that was really interesting. Being able to detach that
Mm-hmm.
and play like a little handheld version of something on
Yeah,
the
because you
go.
could play like a Tamagotchi Chow game or something like that with Sonic Adventure. There was some other games where it was just
There was
like,
like a little puzzle game for Choo Choo Rocket,
yeah,
because
yeah.
that's probably one of my favorite games for the
Mm-hmm.
system.
Did you Rocket?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
cool.
love that game.
Awesome.
Played a ton of that, and you got some weirder things like Omicron was on there,
Mm-hmm.
which was Quantic Dream's first game, I believe.
I think it was the first one on consoles at least.
Yeah,
I'll check it out and put the answer up.
yeah. I think it is their first game.
Right.
Which, I mean, without that, you wouldn't have gotten all like Heavy Rain,
Yeah.
any of those
All
things.
of those games.
And it had David Bowie in it.
Yeah. I remember I've never played the game, and you mentioned that to me. Oh, whenever I was playing Detroit, and you're like, "Oh, have you played this game?" I'm like, "I don't even know what that is." And you explained it to me, and you're like, "David Bowie's in it." I'm like, "Okay, now I have to look this up."
Yeah, and it has a performance by David Bowie in it.
Yeah.
It's weird, but
Yeah.
awesome.
But the coolest thing about this console to me was its online capabilities.
Yeah.
Because like I was mentioning before, like Fantasy Star Online, and you actually got updates to the game and free like equivalent to what we call DLC now, because you
Mhm.
get free mission packs and stuff like that, and you could get some of your like things updated and stuff like that. And it was just really really great idea, and it was like a just basically it opened your eyes to what everything started to become with like the Xbox, and if you bought the modem for the PlayStation, and then eventually 360 PlayStation, but we'll get into that in a sec.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, and the Xbox.
Yeah.
This era was a little weird because like everybody had a PlayStation.
It's true. Because,
Like,
I mean, if because this was the DVD
yeah,
generation.
and everybody who was like on the Nintendo 64 bandwagon, in like my case, with my group of people that I knew, like they were just like, okay, we're getting a PlayStation 2. I'm like, oh, are you now?
Well, because it doubled as a DVD player.
Yeah.
And that was a massive selling point for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't have a DVD player when
Yeah.
I was a kid. Like, this gave me a way to watch movies in my room.
Yeah.
You know, like it was awesome.
Yeah. I remember whenever I got the console, I actually got Gladiator and Braveheart with it. And those are my first DVD movies, and it was really cool because like I just watched them on my own time
Yeah.
on my own TV, and just be like, cool, like. And then we actually would move the console up to the main television so that we could watch rented DVDs. So then it's like, yeah, my console's actually pretty like
It was
important.
it was arguably a more affordable way to get a DVD player.
Yeah, considering you got a game station and a media playing device.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Like this was definitely it was the first generation where I owned everything.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Cool.
because I had
They
I had a
they
PlayStation
came out
2.
staggered too, because it was like 99, 2000, 2001. Um, and so you had like a little bit of time in between them.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess the Super Nintendo came out like a year and a bit after the Sega Genesis, but
Yeah,
it's like 88 to 90 or
but
90.
like this was really the first time that I found something in every place that I'm like, I have to play this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got a PS2 out of the gate because it's
Right.
PlayStation 2. I had a PlayStation 1. I want the next one.
Yeah.
I can play all my old games on it.
It already had a bunch
Cool.
of licenses on it that you knew were coming over to.
Yeah.
Because, like, in this era, there was more of a lot of times people talk about first party and third party games. Well, something that a lot of people don't talk about anymore is second party games. And in this era, there were more what they used to call or what they call second party games, which are kind of like they're being published by like Sony, for example, but they're actually being completely solely developed by a company that's not fully owned by Sony or Microsoft, for example.
Yes.
And there was a lot more of that. Like Square used to be a second party developer for PlayStation. That's
Yep.
why you only saw Final Fantasy. And it was like they would do like exclusivity deals where the companies would only work with this specific console owners and be like, okay, we'll make games for your company for X amount of years. And like there are some uh, companies that like you used to see Square Soft games on only Nintendo,
Yep.
and then you only saw them on PlayStation, and that's the reason why. It was because of these like what we used to call second party games, and it's kind of funny. I've even seen Reddit posts like, "What's second party?" and it's just like, "Oh my god, I
It
feel
just
old."
it doesn't exist anymore.
It not really, no. Yeah, because they're just considered first party because EA has bought them.
But I mean, like I said, I know for this generation, it was the the PS2 was the must-have immediately,
Mm-hmm.
and then as time went on, um, seeing like I had a friend whose brother had an Xbox,
Yeah.
and we played. I want to say Return to Castle Wolfenstein
Okay.
online at his
Yeah.
house, and I'm like, holy shit! Like this is a brand new experience for
Yeah.
me. I mean, I had a PC. I played online games on the PC,
Yeah, I
so
had
I mean
already been
that
playing
wasn't
like
new.
Warcraft 2 and Age of Empires by this point, so it kind of wasn't a new concept to me.
But like having the chat capability,
Yeah,
like
that was huge
in-game
for
chat,
sure. And
getting yelled at by somebody because I'm flamethrowering them, it was amazing.
yeah.
And that was, I'm like, it was a lot of fun. I would really like to get into that. And then when they announced Knights of the Old Republic,
Hmm.
I'm like, it's a Star Wars RPG. I'm buying it. And
That was the only reason why I wanted an Xbox. It wasn't enough to like get me interested in the console though, but because I felt that like everybody who was on the Xbox side was like the FPS crowd, and then everybody who was like single player experience, RPG experience was on the PlayStation 2 side. And you had a lot of people who were like, okay, well, like I generally play these types of games, and then I generally play those types of games, because like that's how I saw the divide with like a lot of people in my high school at the time.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm with you because we
there were some
did
people who
play.
had both of them, because definitely like games are games, and like play as many as you can. But
We did play a lot of Halo,
hmm,
and especially with the online stuff,
yeah,
it was a lot of Crimson Skies because that was one of the
yeah, I've
big.
heard that game's really really great.
It was an amazing online game.
Hmm.
There was that. There was Rainbow Six Three.
Okay.
I think it was the third one. Um, and Counter Strike because
Right.
Counter Strike was on there as well. Like those were real big shooters, but you did have other things that were interesting. Like you had Jet Set Radio Future.
Yeah, Sega, once they stopped and released the announcement that they would stop doing hardware and concentrate on software and start bringing things over, it actually, like a lot of their games came over to the Xbox.
Yeah,
And the, s- I think the Sega development team actually helped the Microsoft development team make their console. There, like, I believe there's citations that you can find that back that up. But
but like, and then like moving even a little bit more forward for me personally, like
Hmm.
kind of moving on. Um, this is where I found Nintendo found their place.
Okay.
This is Nintendo's like role now. This is their spot. They're not I don't feel like they're a primary console. It's for I more of a I hate saying hardcore, but more of like a
Family friendly.
I mean they are family friendly. If you have young kids and you don't play video games, absolutely. Yeah, I mean you're probably not listening to us, but yeah, that's the way to go. But if you play video games, more likely than not, you're going to have, or in this case, you would have had a PS2 or an Xbox,
Yeah.
or maybe both. But whether you had one or the other,
Hmm.
probably also had a GameCube.
Yeah.
Because the experiences you were going to get on your GameCube were entirely different than what you would get on either of the
A
consoles.
lot of people, to sort of back up what you're saying, this is just what I hear people saying a lot. The Nintendo consoles, kind of like the GameCube onwards, was kind of just like a first party machine,
Yeah, basically.
and they
Well, I mean,
sell.
not the Wii, but
Well, the Wii was just, yeah,
shovelware.
yeah, but
We'll talk about that in a minute.
yeah, we'll talk about that probably next.
Right.
But yeah, the GameCube and Nintendo kind of has sort of become a first party machine where it's
Yeah.
like you're getting a completely separate experience with great games and like quality content, but most of it's from Nintendo.
Yeah.
They're trying to change that to their credit with the Switch.
They
And there's a
are.
lot of indie titles, and I think that's really great. And they're starting to get a lot of like big AAA games on the Switch, which I think
Yep.
is awesome. But I still feel like I only really play certain types of games on the Switch.
And it's still primarily I mean it's primarily my handheld console,
Well,
but
yeah.
it's my handheld console. I've played it
Hmm.
in docked mode a handful of times
Okay.
in the 2 years I've owned it.
I mainly only play it docked unless I'm playing Diablo on the with my friends in the same room.
I mostly play it where I would play it in bed
Hmm.
or sitting in a room without a TV.
Right.
If I've got to go somewhere, I'll take my Switch with me.
Yeah.
It's my handheld.
Let's move on to the
Yes.
Wii. Yeah, they
Again,
had
this
amazing sales at that with a gimmick.
but this
I'm standing by that. It was a gimmick.
oh for sure, and it
And
wasn't
sure, I'm playing Beat Saber right now, which arguably is Wands,
also
but
a
like,
gimmick.
yeah.
But yeah, it's you did have like a handful
Mm-hmm.
of really good Wii games.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, you could play most of them with a controller.
Yep. This is what I always used to tell people. You can play with all the good Wii games, you can play them all with a controller, and it's better with a controller.
Yeah.
Twilight Princess, for example.
Yeah.
Yes. Although you should be playing that on the GameCube because Link is left-handed. Anyway.
Anyways. Yeah, but again, this is Nintendo falling right into their place again.
Yeah.
I picked up a 360 right away
Mm-hmm.
because Xbox for me ended up taking over the PlayStation.
Right.
And two, the 360 came out well before
Yeah.
the PS3. So it was a no-brainer to grab a 360 when it came out.
Yeah. For me, I wanted the PlayStation 3, but because I was kind of in college at the time and not had any money, I bought portable consoles again.
Yeah.
Because they're a little bit cheaper and easier to play, and I'd have them with me. And I only got a 360 due to circumstance.
I mean, I got the 360.
I'm very glad I got the 360 because I think it's a wonderful console. It's a lot better than what I know of and saw from the Xbox.
It really was, in my opinion, it was the one that won this like era.
Early, yeah.
I mean, yeah, the Wii had
Well,
tremendous sales.
Excluding the Wii, early you are correct in sales. Yes,
I
and then
I
the
think
PS3 matched it.
even late, the 360 did have some really good exclusive content.
Yeah, they both had their very good exclusive
And
content.
and that's ultimately it's exclusive content that pushed me to buy a PS3. Otherwise, I wouldn't have probably jumped in. It was when Metal Gear Solid 4.
Okay.
I'm like, well, I have to play it because it's Metal Gear. I
Right.
love Metal Gear.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I picked it up solely because of that. I bought the one that came with
Right.
it. And I mean, at that point I did pick up Uncharted,
Mm-hmm.
which though not as good,
As
well, it's a series that really dramatically improved in my opinion
yeah.
from the first game to the second game.
Mm-hmm. That's why if
I'm
you're
still glad that I'm glad that it got the sequel.
mm-hmm.
The first game was good, but the second game was great. Um, yeah, I did pick up that, but for the most
They
part,
that
I think I own maybe 15 to 20 PS3 games,
oh, okay.
and I think I have like two or 300 360 games.
I don't know if you have that many 360 games.
Probably 200.
Okay.
I have a lot of 360 games, but that's
But
because everything that was
the
coming out, I was picking up on the 360.
but really the real question is, and this is how I see this era. Most of it was cross platform. So how many of those games on either console are exclusives? And you'll probably see that you have more exclusives on the PS3.
Well, because yeah, because I was
But
only buying
every game,
console
right?
exclusives
And all
for that
those
system.
games that those 200 games that you bought on the 360, you wouldn't have bought them also on the PlayStation 3.
No,
You just you could have done the same thing the other way around. And that's
it's
what I love about this era.
it's because I loved the controller.
Okay.
To me, yeah, I mean, even though now
Mm-hmm.
I will play the majority of my stuff on the PS4,
Yeah.
the 360 controller was just so comfortable.
Yeah, it's just an extension of the PS2 controller because they learned from their mistakes.
Yeah, it fit great in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
The weight was perfect.
I don't know. I disagree with that.
I loved everything about the controller.
If it had a lithium ion battery pack in it and be a little bit less weight intensive than the AA batteries, it would have been better.
Well, I mean, you
Especially
you could
since
get a battery pack for it.
right, but I had the battery pack on it and it still weighed a considerable amount. I also had a chat pad constantly attached to mine, and
I did too.
I
I
just
did too. The
I just
chat pad
remember
did
that
add
controller
weight,
probably being one of the heaviest ones.
but it was yeah, I found it super comfortable in my hand. Even the chat pad was it fit nice.
Mm-hmm.
You
It
know, I
was well
haven't
designed.
I haven't found another one for a console that's as good as
I
that.
wanted to get the chat pad for the PS3 and I didn't just because there wasn't a good one.
Yeah,
Because it's
it's
just
even I have one for my PS4.
oh okay.
And it doesn't feel the same.
Mm.
It was just so I loved the controller. I loved the um like I guess operating system.
Yeah, the again the other really cool thing I like about this era is that I feel this era is where they both innovated off of each other. It
Yes.
was very like a Marvel versus DC argument where it's like, oh, like these guys are doing better things, these guys are doing better things, now these guys are doing better things, and it was constantly iterations off of each other. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until this era that they didn't start doing it a lot, because you got like more instant software updates and actual um like the versions of the OSs changed, and then all of a sudden it would look completely different. Like I
Yeah, you
remember
had huge and like they were massive updates and like
hmm
you were aware of them because there was news about it. It's like, "Oh,
yeah,
this big update's coming for your."
because you didn't get that in the previous generation at
No.
all.
Well, you didn't really have an operating system that you spent time in
Hmm.
except on the Xbox arguably because you had chat features within there. You
Yeah,
could you could load music onto it,
yeah, and you could do that on the PlayStation if you bought the modem for it, but like
and
unless you're playing Final Fantasy
the hard
11, you
drive.
yeah, well, it came together
That's yeah, well, yeah,
because you bought it if you played Final Fantasy 11, so
which I did,
or EverQuest.
which I didn't. But no, I found the operating system of the 360 was just so much more user friendly, and they just kept streamlining it
Hmm.
to make it better and better. Whereas I found the PlayStation was a little bit more convoluted.
Well, they
Um,
originally
you had a
they
lot
used
of
a
like
cross.
menus and stuff.
Sorry.
well,
I didn't hear you.
you had a lot of menus,
Oh, okay.
or like not tabs, but
I used the crossbar media thing
yeah.
from
So
the PSP.
you would like, which I hated.
Really? I
Yeah,
thought it was like very streamlined. I
I
knew where to go.
I did not like it for anything that you had loaded
I
on the
guess
console. You're
I
like,
had a
move to your
PSP
games.
before getting a 360 or a PS3, so I was already used to the interface.
All right, let's get into this next argument because you just brought it up.
Yeah. Nintendo DS versus PSP. I had both of them.
Same.
And the reason why was because they both catered to different audiences in video games, and
Yeah.
I kind of overlapped with both of them. And I like was at college a lot, and I couldn't bring a console with me, so I bought the handhelds instead. So yeah, like I originally had the Game Boy Advance, and then I got the DS Lite. So whenever I say I had a DS, that's the one that I mean. But yeah, they were great. Like the consoles had wireless near field communications that
Hmm.
you could talk to each other using Wi-Fi. And I found it kind of funny because like in college, a lot of my classmates were on the PSP bandwagon because they were on the PlayStation bandwagon probably,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly. And then so they naturally got the PSP, and I was getting the DS Lite, and I was like, okay, well maybe I'll get a PSP like next year or something. Which I did end up getting then, but they all sold their PSPs, and I don't understand why. It's like I told them, I'm like, I think you just bought the wrong games.
Yeah.
Like they were really excited about Luminous, but then they got bored of it in like a month, and I'm like, okay, well you can't play Luminous for a year.
Yeah.
Like
It's a
buy
rhythm game.
yeah, buy something else, and like there's other games coming for it. Like I don't know, and they all ended up just selling them, and I just thought that was kind of a funny story.
Now I will say, because I picked up a DS Fat.
Hmm.
That was my first one when there was like a handful of games out for it. I think the
Yeah.
only thing I had for at least a couple of weeks was the Mario 64 DS,
Oh, okay.
which was all right,
Hmm.
but to me that wasn't like, I was kind of like, oh, maybe this was a mistake.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then even the PSP had a weak launch.
Yeah.
It didn't have a ton of great content out the gate. Um, I feel I think you had that was Untold Legends,
Yep. I had both those games,
which was okay.
which I thought was really cool because like that was the game I was trying to get people to get at the
Yeah,
college, and I'm like, well, why don't you guys get this game? It's
so that you
like
can play it together.
yeah, and like I think one of them eventually got it because
You had a Metal Gear,
yeah.
which came out shortly, which was arguably one of the worst Metal Gear Acid,
All right.
because it was a card-based
Oh.
game. It was interesting. I didn't hate it,
Hmm.
and it did have a really interesting multiplayer
Right.
aspect where you could play against somebody.
Yeah.
It had a competitive mode, and I do remember playing it against a friend of mine,
Hmm.
and just like, if you got great cards, well,
Yeah.
here's a rocket launcher to your face. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean the DS obviously won hands down.
Well,
I mean
it's
we're not
one of
going
the
through and picking out winners here, but
no, but it sold more consoles than like anything. But I got the DS because I really wanted to play the Harvest Moon titles, especially since they linked with the Game Boy Advance ones, and I thought that feature was really really cool.
yeah.
So
Actually,
you,
we were talking about this too, I think last week,
hmm,
because I mentioned Boktai
right,
on the Game Boy Advance, and if you had either of the Boktai games,
hmm,
which had a solar sensor in them,
yep,
you could pop that cartridge into the bottom when you were playing Lunar
hmm,
Nights, and you could use the solar sensor in it.
yeah,
And you got that and stuff. Plus, even outside of that, you could throw a game in the bottom and a game in the top and close up your system and go somewhere, and you have two games that you can play now.
yeah,
I can play Final Fantasy Tactics if I want to have something a little bit more serious, and I can have something dumb in the top
hmm,
that's going to be a little bit more light if I want something.
yeah,
It was really the first time
hmm.
you could have two full games in your system and go somewhere,
What you're saying, yeah,
right? I mean, you got that eventually with the PSP, and that you could start downloading stuff.
Yep. Well,
Um,
this is the era where you started getting the digital content
yeah,
versus physical. Yeah. The thing I liked a lot about this era as well was I'm a very big fan of RPGs, and the thing I noticed about this and what made me decide to get both of them was that a lot of the RPGs that I wanted to play weren't on the other consoles.
no,
So there was a lot of really great RPGs for the PlayStation Pocket that just weren't released anywhere else. And then with the Nintendo DS, it pumped out RPGs like they were going out of style.
yep,
And I had so many choices, and some of them bad,
yep,
really, really bad. And some of them were great. And there was a
yeah.
lot of Square Final Fantasy titles and the like. And
And
yeah.
you got Final Fantasy titles on both of them,
Hmm.
which was really interesting.
Yeah.
And they were
And they were
unique to
different.
each. Yeah.
Yeah, they were slightly different. Yeah. Because
I
that.
mean, say what you will, but I remember sitting in a restaurant playing Dissidia,
Hmm.
the first one,
Yep.
against a friend of mine,
Right.
and we had a blast.
Hmm.
We had so much fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like
Yeah.
it's not a great, I know it's not a great game, but we had a lot of fun with it, and that's really what matters the most about it.
Yeah. The thing I disliked the most about this era was that like the only time that I really knew whenever a lot of people had handhelds was whenever Pokemon came out. And then
Yeah.
like either you kept on playing Pokemon or you just stopped playing Pokemon entirely. And this era there wasn't as many people who had the handhelds that I knew about anyway. Part of the problem probably was that I was in college, but I was in a computer programming course, so there
That's,
was a lot of gamers there.
yeah.
But like there was a lot of people who they didn't have any handheld consoles, so a lot of those games that had features like I always wanted to play the Link Beyond Worlds game with a bunch of people, and there was one guy who had it, but he like beat a Link's Awakening and he sold his game. I'm like, what the fuck? We were playing through this game, and it's like, oh right, sorry, I forgot, and I'm like, ah, you idiot, like, whatever. But let's move on. Um, yeah, so what I like to call Microsoft Game Pass versus the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, I mean, so the Xbox One was the first one that we bought.
Okay.
Um, because well, yeah, the 360 was the console in our household.
Right.
We had two.
Yeah.
Um, I've mentioned before, my wife is a huge fan of Gears,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, we each had our own, really.
Mm-hmm.
So to move on to the next generation with and she's a big BioWare fan as well.
Right.
So with Inquisition coming out, she's like, "Well, we're getting a next generation console. Which should we get?" And I was like, "Well, let's
Yeah.
get the one because I mean, all of our stuff is on Xbox.
Yeah.
So let's go that direction." And we got it. Um, she got Inquisition.
Mm-hmm.
It came with Sunset Overdrive,
Okay.
which is an outstanding game and is available on PC now, I think.
Well, most stuff on the Xbox, the 720 is on the PC.
Yes,
So.
but it's a new edition, a
Mm-hmm.
new PC edition. Um, Play it. It's super good. Not many people did, but honestly, like it just the system fell flat for me.
It was a miss.
The
Like
operating system
it.
was so clunky.
What's funny about this era is the only way they know the sales is by like mistakes and doing math on Microsoft's part because they don't officially release how many consoles they've sold, and that says volumes about how many little they've sold.
Yeah.
Like they release a few numbers and it's like we've shipped this many. Well, how many of those did you sell? I don't know, but yeah.
Like
Um,
it was the first one in our house. I did play a whole lot of Sunset Overdrive,
yeah.
and I got a few other games for the system,
Mhm.
some of which I still haven't even opened
Right.
because I just
What
didn't.
what killed it for me was what I was alluding to just a minute ago. Like, there are no exclusives for the damn console. If they are exclusives, can I get it on the PC? oh, I can. Why don't I just get it on the PC then? Because it runs
Yeah.
better, it looks better. Sure, there might be a couple of edge cases where I'm wrong here, but like
You don't
from
need an Xbox Live subscription to play on the PC.
yeah, exactly.
That's I bought Sea of Thieves.
They shot themselves in the foot by doing that.
They
Like,
kind of did, yeah.
and it's just like how I'm curious to see how they fix that moving forward. And it's like it looks like some great things are coming out, and yeah, they're doing a little bit better with some of the 4K stuff, but like we're not really like fully at 4K yet until the next gen. So it's like these are like the baby step consoles, like the Pro and the Scorpio or the One X or like
It's
whatever
the
versions there are.
refresh.
The refresh things, and like I don't know. Microsoft just, in my opinion, made a very bad choice with not having exclusives, not grabbing exclusives like they were in the last console generation, and they know that's why they were being the better successor in a
Yeah.
lot of the previous generation. And it's like you saw PlayStation just hammer out like Uncharted and like beat you in sales numbers with those, and some other exclusive games like the Metal Gear game and stuff like that, and just constantly doing that type of shit, and you knew they were going to continue doing it. Why did you make it like this PC thing? I think it was just
Yeah.
corporate pointing their finger down going, well, we want this to work on PC as well. And it's like, okay, so like, are we not making consoles anymore and just getting people to buy Windows? I don't know. That's kind of what I feel like they're trying to do.
I mean, they're taking a step away. Um, yeah. I You're gonna be playing Microsoft games on wherever
Mm-hmm.
soon. I mean, they're working on something with Nintendo, so you can play their content on the Switch.
Yep. Which I'm
Um,
glad about because I can play the new Ori game on the
yeah,
Switch whenever it comes out. So that's going to be awesome
there's
because I'm not
so
buying that on Game Pass.
I I I would be incredibly surprised if Microsoft releases another console.
Like after the next Xbox that's coming out, because the PlayStation 5 is coming out, and then there's a hardware project as well for the Xbox. So
I would be surprised if it's a full-on console and not some kind of streaming device.
we'll eventually get there, unfortunately.
I mean, yeah, that's the direction that we're going to go, which for physical media whores like myself and JC here,
The physical media is not going to die for a very long time, but like they're still selling CDs.
it's good for the environment, but bad for my collection. So, um, yeah, I I don't know. When I had the opportunity finally to buy a PS4,
Mm-hmm.
I picked one up.
Yeah.
It attached itself to our primary TV,
It hasn't
and
moved.
it hasn't moved.
Yeah, like there's the VR headset.
And
There's all
even
these
even when they
exclusive
did the
games.
the
Everybody you know is on it. Like, sure,
when
that you some Xbox people can say the same thing about their console too. Like that's always true, but it's just
when
for
we
us
got
it
the generation refresh with the Pro and the One
yeah.
X, I picked up a Pro,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a noticeable difference between the Pro and the like standard.
Yeah, I would have a Pro, but I don't have a 4K TV, so it's like why? Like I'd still get some of the better like graphical updates and stuff like that, just
Hmm.
not the 4K. But that's the reason why I haven't gotten it. But yeah, I don't understand what Microsoft did. Like I was totally, I'll be honest, I was really not into the Xbox, the OG Xbox, and then I completely changed my mind 180 with the 360. I was
Yep.
super impressed. Like I've explained the story before. I got it due to circumstance through one of my good friends. Thank you. And I played Dragon Age on those consoles, and I completely went 180. I'm like, wow, okay, cool. And like I started being like, yeah, I can see why people would have this console. Like there's some good exclusives, like the games run just as good and stuff like that. And then I was just like, well, what console am I going to get next? And then you start getting more and more information, and I'm just like, well, I have a PC. So why would I get this?
Yeah.
Yeah, cuz 5 or 6 different. Now, somebody who sees this eventually will probably be like, "Oh, there's all these exclusives."
So many
Okay,
exclusives.
sure. List out the PlayStation 4 exclusives as well then.
Yeah.
And
And when it comes down to it, the PS4 just
and
has
to me exclusive means not console exclusive, exclusive.
yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of brings us to our final point, I guess. The new console war, which this one is my favorite because all them PC Master Race people, I've always been on both sides. All those PC Master Race people now have their own freaking console war, and that's digital distribution. Ha, ha, ha. Anyway, GOG, Steam, Epic, Origin, and so on. I find this hilarious
I mean, I
because
wouldn't really include Origin because Origin's not good.
neither is Epic, but you have to get it to play some games.
Uh,
You can't add more than one item in your shopping cart. There is no search feature. You have to find the actual web page or go through the main page.
Currently, they're just timed exclusives, and it's because they have better.
They have Fortnite money. They have all that Fortnite money,
Yeah, so they don't
and
need
they're spending
They
it.
don't need developer money, so
No,
they
they
can give
don't.
developers more.
They're pushing their weight around.
They really are. And I mean, at some point, because Steam has Steam money,
Well, they have to run out of Half-Life 2 money eventually.
you
They have to.
then they'll drop Half-Life 3.
No, they won't.
No, they won't.
No, they won't.
They never will. Um,
It's as good as dead.
Yeah, no,
Just like Duke Nukem Forever should have been good as dead.
No, we're going too far back in time, JC. We can't go back. Only forward.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, like Epic's really pushing, but I think at some point Steam will step in and throw their monstrous weight around.
I think it'll be too late because you also have Apple Arcade coming out,
That doesn't
Google
count.
Stadia. It'll start counting though as time moves on, and also so Steam proved that it was viable, and now everybody is jumping on that bandwagon. And to be honest with you, as a developer, like let's use Baldur's Gate Enhanced Editions as an example. If I buy that game through the Beamdog client, the developer gets more money.
Yeah.
If I buy it through GOG, the developer gets money, but not as much. If I buy it through Steam, same thing. It's actually less money than they would get from GOG. Just letting you know. Anyway,
And if you buy it through Epic, they
yeah,
get
and it's
they get
even
the
more.
most. Yeah.
But if you buy it from Beamdog, they get the most, and that's their company. So Activision looks at this type of stuff and they're like, "Oh, if we release our own thing, that's why Origin's a thing." Right? It's by EA.
Yeah.
They get the most amount of money if you buy it through Origin. So they're going to be basically like, you have to get it through Origin.
Oh, you forgot a big major player in this one too.
I probably did.
You did. It's not on your list.
What
Uplay.
what the fuck are you talking about?
Come on,
No!
Ubisoft's client.
No.
Ubisoft's client.
Okay, yeah, I did, but
If you have Origins on this list, if you have the garbage that is Origins, you also have to consider the utter trash that is Uplay.
in Origin's defense, it is neat that you can get their subscription model and then get access to a bunch of games. That is really cool, and that's awesome. Having said that,
Tiered subscription models too.
yep, that is true. But that's the future, and it is nice that if you get a game through like the Beamdog distributor, then the developer gets more money. That's why I bought all the Enhanced Engine games through the Beamdog distributor. I personally don't mind having another um, app to run a game. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I'd rather get everything DRM free through GOG if I can, or through the client by that company if I can, if it's DRM free. But I can't always have my way. I have to play Skyrim through Steam. I have to play Civ through Steam. It's fine. But
And I mean, like Steam they have the install base because you had to install it with Half-Life 2.
I think so, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, they had their foot in the door way early.
Yeah.
And
Well,
with it
they've
being
done
the
their thing for years.
with it being the go-to platform, I just have everything on Steam.
Yeah.
The hard thing is there's so much garbage on there too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard sometimes sifting through the crap to find
That's
something good.
True with all of them, though.
Well,
or all the
yeah.
larger ones, like even Humble Bundle as well,
Yep.
which is something else we didn't mention. Or Green Man Games, I think, is another one which is similar to Humble Bundle.
But a lot, like with Humble, you just get Steam codes.
Yep.
Or
GOG
GOG codes.
Which unfortunately a lot
Or
of them
eventually Epic codes.
beef to pick with Humble Bundle. A lot of the time you can't get a GOG code. Damn it.
Rip.
Yeah, fucking sucks. Especially if it's available on those, but whatever, it probably costs them more money or something. So yeah, The console wars, really interesting. How this is always an argument and a thing. At the end of the day, what game do you want to play?
Yeah,
Go
pretty
play it.
much.
Like,
That's
enjoy it. I
that's
mean,
it. Don't argue.
yeah,
Just love what you love.
yeah.
Play it.
Or if you're gonna win, you may as well if you're gonna argue, you may as well like make sure you win, or have
Make sure you win. Just
like win your fights.
don't pull an Ian
Yeah.
and get in a fist fight with a kid that knows karate.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
bad call.
Bad call. Yeah.
He hit me first.
Play play what you want. Just it doesn't matter. It's just really interesting to go into. So we thought we would go through with our experience and tell some stories and some memories of the console wars since we've lived through a lot of them and
We're
yeah,
old.
I guess we're getting older for sure.
But tell us what you guys think.
Yeah, tell us what you think. What do you guys think of the new console war? Especially like, I don't know, like maybe it won't even matter. It
Do
won't be
you
a thing.
have the Epic Store installed?
Well, yeah. Are you playing Fortnite?
Are you playing Fortnite?
I don't really care. If
No,
you
it doesn't
are.
matter to me. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
but yeah, like I don't know, like Borderlands 3 is a good thing. Like,
Yeah.
are you going to install Epic to install Borderlands? Or are you going to just get it on the console?
Metro Exodus.
Yeah, man, they have so much money.
So much
People
money.
like I thought people spent money on League of Legends. Apparently, not enough. Like, because
I have a physical copy of Fortnite
you do on what?
on the PS4.
Oh, because you played Fortnite before it was like
I
Fortnite.
Played Fortnite before it had a battle royale mode. When it was just a
It's 'cause you're a
base
nerd.
building zombie defense game,
Mm-hmm.
and it was real fun. And then they put out the battle royale mode, and I didn't care because I wasn't really interested in battle royale mode. So I've never put it back in my console since. But it's there.
Yeah, you should sell it. It probably was worth some money. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
But yeah, tell us what you guys think.
yeah,
What are you guys playing right now?
Yeah,
What
and
should we be playing right now?
yeah. And if you made it this far, be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends who think our content is interesting. As a reminder, our episodes will be for the long format podcast every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
And news as we make it and it comes out. So, yeah. Have a good day.